Hi, I'm Glyn Dewis and I'm back after a few weeks break, and I've got episode 74 here for you now, and I want to take you through every single step to create the image that you can see on screen. We're going to go from the out of camera shot, all the steps that are needed to get to the final retouch picture. Okay, so first of all, just to give you an idea, a rough idea of what the lighting was, you can see that this has been shot on a grey seamless piece of paper. This was only like a 1.35 metre width, great for transporting around in the car for little jobs like this. But if I had a blank layer, I've got a brush, and I've got one softbox coming in from this direction down here. This was like a 70 centimetre square softbox with a grid coming down from the left-hand side of the screen there, and just off camera, just here, was a silver Lasterlight reflector bouncing a bit of light back into the right hand side here, just to fill in some actual detail into the shadow areas just there. So that was that. And also, just before we start on the actual retouching, down here there's a few wires. This microphone had some wires going from it, and there are also some wires going from the back of the robot. Now I've just got rid of those very quickly using the clone stamp tool, because that's pretty basic and I don't really want to sort of waste your time by going through how to do that. But let's now dive in, show you how we can put the background in and all those kind of special effects. Actually, before we get the background in, I just want to tell you one thing, and that was that I made a selection of both the robot and the microphone. That was done very quickly and easily, because it's just against this grey background, using something like the quick selection tool. And you can see if I just choose that from the toolbar over here on the left-hand side, as I drag around, Photoshop has absolutely no problems making a selection there of the robot. So I did that of the robot, then I did a separate selection of the microphone and saved those. And if I dive over to the channels, you can see that we've got them on the bottom here. So there's the robot cut out, and there's the microphone cut out. That's just going to save me time later on doing it first, so I can whistle through putting all the background in. Okay, so the background then, if I've first of all go to the file, and I'm going to choose place embedded. Now, depending on what version of Photoshop you've got, it might just say place. It's exactly the same command. And the reason I use this is because when I navigate now to a file that I want to use as the background, rather than open it up as a separate document, it will actually place it into the document I'm working on. Now, what I'm going to use for the background here is this. This is just a picture. If I just make that just a little bit bigger. All this is here is those security shutters that you get when shops close up at night. They pull them down, and these are those shutters. And I think these look great for it. But I want to add these in. Now I'm just going to take the saturation way down to desaturate it. Something like that is fine. Click OK, and because I use that place command, you can see now it goes into my picture. It comes already with the transform handles. I'm going to hold down my Shift and Alt, or Shift and Option key, click on one of the outer handles just to enlarge it so it fills the width of the actual picture there, and then use my Move tool to drag it up. Now I'm holding down my Shift key as well, so that it goes up in a perfectly straight line. Now, where I want to actually get this to be at the bottom of is where that grey seamless kind of curves round from the top and then curves round to the floor area. So it's kind of like down by his feet here. So I'm going to lower the opacity on it just a touch and then drag it down to around about there. Should be fine. Let's just bring up the opacity now, press enter, and that's going to commit that in place. The next thing I'll do is go to the file and place embedded, or place command. This time I'll choose one that I'm going to use for the floor, and here I've got one which is actually this was a marble floor in a hotel. Just pointed the camera down to the floor, and this is what we've got here. So let's just press enter, because it covers the width of the screen already. Shift key, hold down my got the Move tool, hold down the Shift key, drag it down now so that it just reaches the bottom of where we just put those shutters in. Now I want to change the perspective of this so it does look as if we're looking across that floor as opposed to looking down on it like the original picture. So with it in place there, I'm going to go to the Edit menu, then we'll go to Transform, and I'm going to choose Perspective. And then when I click on one of the outer handles here, if I just drag that out to the left-hand side, you can see that it kind of changes the perspective just a touch there. And to make it look even better, I'll then put my cursor within the floor area, right-click to then give up Scale. Then I can click on the middle one here and bring that up, and you can see now as I do that, can you see how the floor there looks as if it's, rather than being looking straight down on it, we're now looking across it. So we'll go for something like that. Press enter to commit it. Now we can zoom back in. Now if I turn both of those off, you can see we've got the robot underneath. We now want to make it look as if the robot is actually got that background behind him and he's stood on that floor. So what I shall do is come over to the layers panel, the uppermost layer, which is the floor here. We can see we're working on that one at the moment. I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click on the layer below it. So I'm now selecting the floor and the actual back wall. Now I'm going to put these two into a group. So in the top right hand corner here of the layers panel, we've got a drop down menu. We've got new group from layers, and we'll call that background. Something like that. Then the next thing we'll do is we'll go to the channels, because I've already saved the selections I made earlier on of the robot and the microphone. Now if I hold down my command or control key and just click on the thumbnail of the robot cutout, you can see it kind of loads it in now. We can see these marching ants. It's kind of like that the Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. We had yeah, you know what I mean. So we've got that outline just there. I also want to load in the microphone. Now, if I just now hold down my command or control key and click on that, it's actually going to get rid of the robot one and then add in the microphone one. I want both of them. So to get both of them, when you're holding down your command key, also hold down your shift key, then click on the thumbnail of the robot. Now both of them are actually active, so we can see the actual robot and the microphone. We'll click on the RGB, go back to the layers. I'm now going to hold down my command key, hold down my option key or my alt key, and then I'm also going to click on the layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers panel, and that'll give us that. That's now added a layer mask, and it's actually shown us now that we've got the robot in the scene. Doesn't look that realistic at the moment, but this is where the blend modes come in. We can see that this group here now, which contains those two layers containing the background elements there, by default it says pass through. That's the actual blend mode it's given it. But if I change that now to say, let's just get rid of this there we go. Let's just change that from pass through down to something like overlay. Bang, it just kind of drops in. Straight away, the robot's dropped into the scene. Shadows are there as well. We can see on the floor the original shadows, so he looks like he really is stood on that floor. So that's the hard work done. Now the fun comes with adding all the lighting effects and giving it that final mood. Now, thankfully, I've worked non-destructively so far, so I do have access to the bottom layer and I can make some changes. And the reason I say that is because now, when I look at this microphone stand here, you can see that the actual stand itself isn't straight. If I get my rulers by pressing Command or Control R, then get my move tool and drag out a guide from the left-hand side, you can see when I place it next to it, it actually isn't straight, going vertical against those guides. So I need to straighten that up. Now, the way I can do this is really simple. I go to my background layer, turn off the layer above it, so I now can see the original picture on the grey seamless, get my lasso tool and make a very wide selection around the microphone, come back up right to the top somewhere like that, then press Command or Control J to put a copy of that microphone on its own layer, which we can see here. Then go to Free Transform. So we go Edit, Free Transform to bring up the transform handles, and this little pivot point in the middle here, I'm going to drag that up to the very top of the stem, so that now when I bring my cursor outside of the transform handles, I can actually start to rotate it, and it rotates it on that pivot point just there, which is exactly where I want it to be. So we'll go for somewhere around about there, press Enter to commit it, and all I simply do now is add a layer mask, get a brush, let's bring the size of the brush way down, change the foreground colour to black, and I can just now start to just blend it in just a little bit so that that kind of like matches in just a little bit more. Again, I don't have to be too perfect with this because it's obviously going to be composited and it's going to be covered over by textures. But let's just try and get it as good as we can, something like that. Nice and easy. Might just kind of might tidy this area just up here. Let's see what we can do with that. Might just actually add a layer above that, get my clone stamp tool, and we'll just sample these lines and just paint those in just a little bit, help it all blend in. Same on the one above it, line it up and just paint in like so. That'll do. Just take a little bit off the base, get the brush. Yep, that's cool. All right, so that's that bit done. Let's just zoom out so that's nice and straight as we can see. Okay, let's get rid of the rulers. Now let's just turn on the layer above it. So now we can see that the stem of that microphone stand is nice and straight. Everything's looking good. So now let's just add a reflection before we start adding in any other lighting effects. To do that, I'm going to click on the background layer again. Go to my channels, hold down my Command or Control key and click on the thumbnail that contains the cutout here of the robot. You can see the marching ants going around him. Go back to my layers and then press Command or Control J to get a copy of him. You can see that now on the own layer. Go to Free Transform, so go to Edit, in fact Transform, and we'll flip vertical. Then I'll get my Move tool and I'll drag him downwards. Something like that will be pretty cool. We'll go for there. And we can lower the opacity way down now so it looks like a bit of a reflection. take it down to around about 20% or so, something like that. Just a really subtle one. Let's do the same with the microphone here. So again, click on the original background layer, go back to the channels, hold down the command key, click on the thumbnail of the microphone cutout to load it as a selection, go back to the layers, Command or Control J to put a copy of that up on its own layer, which we can see just here. Then go to Edit, Transform, Flip Vertical. Again, get the move tool and we'll drag that down somewhere like that. Now you can see there's a little bit of it missing at the bottom. That needs to be above that base that we changed, something like that. That's cool, like that. And also you'll notice we need to rotate it. So I'll get my free transform and I'll just rotate it a touch and then we'll drag it over. Use my arrow keys and drag it down, and then we'll lower the opacity of this one as well to around about 20%, like so. That's been made really easy by actually working non-destructive and giving us access to make changes to that microphone stand there. So if ever there was a reason to work non-destructive, that is it. Okay, that's that done. Let's now start adding in some lighting effects, a bit of colour, and just add a little bit of a grungy look to it. All right, so now let's add in a lighting effect. Now we've got the, I told you at the start, we had a softbox over on the left-hand side of the image. So that's actually added highlights on the left-hand side of the robot. So we'll add in a fake light source using that world's simplest lighting effect you've seen me do if you've watched a few of these videos. So to do that, let's just add a blank layer, get a brush. Let's just reset the foreground and background colors to default by pressing D, and we'll press X so that the foreground color is white. I'm gonna get a brush. Let's just make sure the brush is 0% hardness, just a round, soft brush. Make sure there's no settings in there, nothing special here. Let's just use the right bracket key to make it big-ish, something like that will be fine. Press down to get the nice light source there. Go to free transform to bring up the transform handles. Hold down my Shift and Option or Shift and Alt keys and click on one of the handles so it grows in proportion like that. Make it nice and big. And press enter to commit it, get the move tool, and we can click and drag it up into that left-hand corner. Now it starts to make sense why the robot's got those highlights on him. Might bring that down just a touch. Now for added realism with this, when we have a light source, we don't get it being quite so kind of like milky over where there's like contrasty areas you can see in the shutters here, so that we can see a little bit of contrast coming in those areas, which you would have in real life. I'm going to use a blend mode. So let's just rename this to the layer to light. I'm going to change the blend mode of this layer here to linear dodge. Now to show a little bit of that contrast coming through, let's just take the fill slider, bring that down to the left just a little bit, and we start to see, if I go before and after, you can start to see some of that light coming in. This is a great trick if you do add in a light source using this technique. If you want to make it not quite so bright, change the blend mode to linear dodge and use the fill slider. Don't just use the opacity slider, because then that white becomes grey. And lights, when you turn them down, don't go grey. They just become less bright, and that's what this little blend mode here is absolutely brilliant for doing. So that's that. Let's add some dust into the light. So let's go File, and we'll go that Place command again, and I'll just navigate here. I've got that Thingies file, which if you watch a lot of my videos, you'll have seen me use this. This is just rain that we photographed at night. I'll just right click, rotate 90 degrees clockwise, use my Shift and Alt or Shift and Option keys, drag it out so it fills the actual space there. In fact, let's fill the whole of the document. To keep the bright parts, to get rid of the dark parts, all I do is change the blend mode of that layer from normal to screen, and you can see it gets rid of the dark areas. Now I don't want them down the bottom, all these shiny white dusty bits, so I'm just going to add a layer mask, get a gradient by pressing G on my keyboard. I'm going to use the second one along, which is the, you can see when I drop down here, foreground to transparent, black foreground color, click at the bottom, drag upwards just to take it off that bottom area. And then we can use the opacity slider just to control how much of those dust, or sorry, how many of those dust bits we want to be seen. Now I added colour into this as well to give it a little bit of a mood. I did that using Photoshop and also a bit of a plugin right at the end when I was having a bit of a play around. But for now, let's just add a curves adjustment layer. Here we've got the RGB. Let's change that to blue. And if I drag the uppermost right-hand corner and drag that down, we start to add in a bit of yellow. So we can go for like a cross-process kind of feel to this picture, dragging that down to add in the yellow. And if you want to add some blue in it, come to the bottom far left point and drag that up just a touch as well. So it adds just a little bit of that cross-processed kind of look, something like that. That'll do for there. We can also now make his eyes this really vibrant electric blue. This robot was actually switched on, so he was moving around, and so that you knew he was on, those eyes were really bright blue, electric blue. So to do that, it's the same technique that I used on an Iron Man picture, which you may have seen again in some of the earlier videos. To make this blue, then I've added a new blank layer. Let's just call this eyes. Get a brush. Make sure that the brush isn't completely hard, because it'd be hard to paint in the eye area. So let's just, sorry, completely soft. Let's just harden it up a touch by dragging the slider over, and then let's bring the size down using the left bracket key. Come to the foreground color, and I'm going to choose the blue that I want. So we'll go for this kind of area here. Click within it to choose this kind of blue. I like this blue here. That's the kind of electric blue I want, but for this technique, what we do, we choose the blue we want, then we drag downwards to darken it down and muddy it all up. Because what we do, when we click OK, we come in, we paint the actual colour into the eyes. Let's just do this really quick so you can see what we need to do. So we paint it into there. And we'll do it on the opposite eye as well, just in this little area just here. Like so. Actually, just for speed, let's lower the opacity down. I'll get my eraser tool. Can't believe you're using the eraser tool, Glyn. Let's just get rid of that in there. Get rid of that in there. That's cool. Take the opacity up. Now, the reason we use the muddy, darkened version of the colour we want is because the blend mode now, when we change from normal to colour dodge, goes bang, electric. We can then make it even more electric by duplicating that layer like that. If we'd originally gone in there with a nice bright blue, it would look awful. Just choose the color, then drag down to darken it. So something like that. So let's put the eyes into a group, 2 layers there. We'll go for this fly out menu, new group from layers, and we'll call that eyes and press enter. Now, all the hard work has been done. This is really as far as I was kind of thinking of taking you, because, you know, this is all the compositing area in here. Anything that you do from now is just playing to get that final look that you want to do. And this is what I encourage you to do. Just experiment with adjustment layers, going in the color effects, going back into camera raw and adding clarity. But just to give you an idea, this is where I would then maybe think about introducing some plugins. I don't use many plugins, but the ones I do use, I absolutely love for what they bring to an image. Let me just do this quickly by creating a merged copy at the top of my layer stack. So I'm going to come in here. The first thing I might do is maybe go to something like Camera Raw, just to add a little bit of a vignette. So we'll go to the FX tab, post-crop vignetting, and drag that over. Just a little bit of vignette on this really does help. We'll click OK, but obviously if we've got a light in the top left, we wouldn't have a vignette. So we add a layer mask, get our brush, let's just make it nice and soft, and we'll bring the size way up. So it's a nice big brush, something like that, and then I'm just going to paint it off that top left-hand corner so that we still do have our light source coming in. And next thing I would probably do is I'd kind of come in here, and one of the filters I absolutely love is by Topaz. I've got all their plugins here, as you can see, but I tend to use this one 99.9% of the times whenever I dive into their plugins. I love this for what it does, especially in images where you want it to add a bit more grunge into it and a little bit of dirt and really impact on the image. Now you can see that straight away, if I turn that on and off, you can see the effect that the settings I've already applied have given to the image. It really makes it pop. When you look at what I've done over here, we've got some sliders, micro contrast, move that to the right, low contrast, move it to the right, but maybe not quite so much, medium contrast, move that to right, but even less, and I don't even bother touching high contrast. And that tends to give me exactly what I want. Click OK, let it process it. You see the progress bar at the bottom here, so it's starting to apply all that coming in there. Eventually that gets to 100%, kicks it out of Topaz and puts it in as a new layer within my Photoshop document here. And I just carry on playing. And this is what like I said, I just encourage you to do that. But eventually, when you're finished, you can maybe end up with something like this. And you can see that the difference here, I've actually gone in and changed the color even more. But never in one sitting. I did it loads, saved it, came back to it and carried on, and eventually I was happy. So there you go. I thought I'd just quickly show you through some of the process, like the actual compositing workflow, to take your image from somewhere like this to then somewhere like this, and eventually with even more playing around something like I've created for my final job here, which is actually a paid job. This was part of a job I did for the Imperial College in London for their science fair that's coming up. It's a big annual event, and this was a robot that they wanted me to work with, and this microphone at the bottom. But there you go. Thought I'd dive in. It's been a few weeks since I did a tutorial. Hope you appreciate it. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It just means follow. You don't have to pay for it. It just means you get to know when there's a new video. And yeah, spread the word, spread the love, and I'll see you next time.